Welcome back, Berclair Bears. This is Miss Cissom with a lesson on comparing and contrasting. Have you ever had to decide what was the best thing to buy? Or choosing between two things that you really like? Well, today we are going to learn ways to help us compare and contrasting. We will look at characters, setting, or events in passages to determine how they are alike, how they are different. We might even compare their thoughts, their ideas, their facts, and their actions. When we compare and contrast, we are also going to look at graphic organizers that can help us in writing about comparison and contrasting. What does comparing mean, and what does contrasting mean? When you compare characters, setting, or events, you are telling how they are alike. When you contrast characters, setting, or events, you tell how they are different. Let's take a look at some words that authors use to help us in comparing and contrasting in a text. Authors may use words such as like, some, both, the same as, in the same way, similarly to, as well as, to signal that in that particular passage they are comparing how two things are alike. But authors can also use contrasting words to signal events are different. They may use words such as although, however, differ, yet, but, on the other hand. These are a few examples of words that authors may choose to use when they are comparing and contrasting in a text. We also know that we can compare and contrast by looking at homophones. Homophones are words that sound the same, but they are spelt differently and have a different meaning. How is a homophone a way to compare or contrast? Let's look at a few examples that we see here. A pear and a pear. A PAIR is not a fruit. That pair means two people or two things. The PEAR is a fruit. So in comparing, they sound the same. They both begin with a P and have an R, but they have totally different meanings. So I can compare and contrast with homophones, but I can also compare and contrast in my everyday life when I'm going to the store to purchase groceries to eat, when I'm buying gasoline for my car, when I'm buying a home. I look at things that I like compared to how much I have to pay. When I'm purchasing any item from cosmetics to shoes and clothing, or even when I'm working at a job and trying to find out which insurance to purchase. So we all compare and contrast in our everyday life. Let's look at a few examples and let's see if you can figure out what is the comparing and contrasting word and what type of sentence is this. Let's look at our first example. Both of these cells contain a nucleus. Can you find the signal word for comparing and contrasting? Let's go to the next. On the other hand, a pronoun replaces a noun. In this sentence, on the other hand is our clue. Is that comparing or is that contrasting? Take a moment to decide. Let's look at the last. But the biggest factor is 9. Look at the word but. Is that a comparing word or contrasting? You decide. Now, let's go back to these three sentences and review what these are. The sentence was, both of these contain a nucleus. What was the word in the sentence that made it comparing, which means they are alike? The word both. Both of these cells contain a nucleus, so they are showing how they are alike. Go to the second example you were given. On the other hand, a pronoun replaces a noun. So they are telling you how they are different. On the other hand is our contrasting phrase. Let's look at our last sentence with the signal word. The signal word was but the biggest factor is 9. What does the word but tell us? Is it comparing or is it contrasting? If you said contrasting, you are correct. Now, looking at these three sentences, did you come up with a way that there is a signal for a synonym and an antonym? If you said their colors make the difference, you are correct. In the sentence that was a synonym, it was red, both. If the sentence had an antonym or a contrasting word, it was blue. Let's try some more. Let's look at the first sentence. You are going to decide, is it comparing or is it contrasting? The first sentence said the character in the story also had a similar clothing. Looking at this passage, what word tells me if I am saying how they are alike or how they are different? Let's go to the second example. The setting, however, was different for the two businesses. Looking at this sentence, what is the signal word? What does this word tell me to do? Does it tell me that they are alike or they are different? Now let's look at the last example. The pilgrims, in addition, came for religious reasons. What is the signal word to tell me if they're comparing or contrasting? Have you found it? Have you decided what it is? Now let's go over what you said each sentence was. Looking at the first sentence, the character in the story also had similar clothing. If you said also, you are correct. And what does that signal word tell me to do? We are telling how they are alike. It also uses the word similar, which is also another clue. Go to example number 2. The setting, however, was different for the two businesses. The signal word was however. What does however tell me to do? To contrast, tell how they are different. Good job. And the last, the pilgrims, in addition, came for religious reasons. In addition was our signal word, which tells us to compare. There are other things that we can compare, such as looking at these two fruits, an apple and an orange. If I look at these two pieces of fruit, there are many ways that they are alike. There are many similarities, and there are many differences. Let's take a look at how it can be done. When I look at the apple, I can say that both of these are fruits. That is comparing. I can say both of them have a skin. But let's go to how they are different. People don't eat orange skins. They peel it. Oranges have more juice. These are just a few examples on graphic organizers on how you can find things that are alike and things that are different. Now let's look at these few sentences about the Pilgrims and the Puritans. It says that the Puritans came for religious reasons. The Pilgrims settled in Massachusetts Bay. The Pilgrims believed they should worship as they wished. The Puritans believed in a pure religion. Pilgrims came for religious reasons. Pilgrims accepted all men into their community to vote. Puritans settled in Massachusetts Bay, and Puritans accepted all men into their community who were landowners in their faith. Now, if I take these statements and put them into how they are alike or they are different, how would it look? Let's look at one way we can do comparing and contrasting. Using those 7 sentences, you should have come up with something similar to this. How are they alike? The Puritans and Pilgrims came for religious reasons. The Pilgrims and Puritans settled in Massachusetts Bay. And the Pilgrims believed they should worship as they wished. Okay, let's talk about contrasting. The Puritans believed in a pure religion. Another way that they are different, the Puritans accepted all men into their community who were landowners. And the last, the Pilgrims accepted all men in their community to vote. So I can look at 2 moments in history, and I can compare and contrast how they are alike and how they are different. I can also compare and contrast poetry. I may look at the types of poems and find out how they are alike or how they are different. I can look at poets. I can compare how their poems are alike, how their lives are different and alike. So I can compare and contrast people as well. I can also compare points of view. Both of these men were presidents, but they both came from different parties, such as Democrat and Republican. They all had a view on specific events, whether it be the economy, our natural resources, or other things. They still had different points of view. You can also look in science and compare and contrast. We could compare these three snakes that are found in the Southwest. We can look at ways that they are alike and ways that they are different. When we compare and contrast, we often use graphic organizers. The most common is the Venn diagram to your right. However, there is also a chart and the charts that we have used in the previous slides. In order to practice things that you have learned in your distant learning packet in reading, you will be doing a lesson 16 on comparing accounts on the same topic. In other words, you will be comparing points of view that people had on the exact same topic. This is an extension of our lesson that we have on comparing and contrasting. Also, in your extended learning packet in social studies, you will be working on these passages: a hollow ground, construction threatens Civil War sites; slavery, the Civil War and Reconstruction, Gettysburg and the Gettysburg Address; Southern views; slavery, Civil War and Reconstruction, background to the Civil War; slavery, Civil War and Reconstruction, the Emancipation Proclamation; and Civil War and Reconstruction, Reconstruction. As we come to the end of this lesson, have a good day in learning. Today is the day to learn something new.